Chapter 35. A Discovery. Robinson could not forget his boat. It seemed a companion. "It may be the means of my escape from this place," he thought. He took frequent journeys across the island to where his little boat lay in a cove. He would start out in the morning and walk over to the west side of the island, take his boat, and have a pleasant little sail. He always returned home before dark, for, to tell the truth, Robinson was a coward. He was as timid as a hare. He was afraid of everything and spent many nights without sleep because of fear. It was while on one of his visits to his boat that Robinson made a discovery that changed his whole life. It happened one day, about noon, when he was going toward his boat, that he, with great surprise, saw the print of a man's naked foot on the shore in the sand. He stood like one rooted to the ground. He could not move, so great was his surprise and fear. He listened, looked around, but could hear and see nothing. He went up to a little hill to look further, but nothing was in sight. There was but the one footprint. There was no doubt about it. There it was, foot, toes, heel, and every part of a foot. Robinson tried to think how it might have gotten there, but he could not. It was a mystery. He was greatly afraid and started at once for his shelter. He ran like one pursued. At every little way he would look behind to see if anyone was following him. Never a frightened rabbit ran to his hiding place with more terror than Robinson ran to his cave. He did not sleep that night for fear and remained in his shelter for 3 days, never venturing out. But his food was growing short and his goats needed to be milked. He finally, with 1,000 wild fancies, forced himself to go about his duties. But he could not get the footprint out of his mind. He spent many sad and fearful days thinking about it. How could it have gotten there? Whose was it? Was the owner savage or not? What did he want on the island? Were some of the questions that haunted him. "Perhaps," he thought one day, "I just imagined I saw a footprint. Or perhaps it was one of my own that I have made when I was going to sell my boat." He took courage at this and began to go about the island again, but he went in great fear, always looking behind him. He was always ready to run at the first sight of danger. He had made himself a large, strong new bow and plenty of arrows. He carried these in a quiver he had made from his cloth. He fashioned, too, a sharp pointed lance-like weapon which he hurled with a kind of sling. In his belt he carried some new sharpened stone knives. He had found a better kind of rock out of which to make his knives. It resembled glass and could be brought to a fine keen edge. Armed thus, he began to have more confidence. He had a strong desire to see the footprint again and make up his mind about it. He wished to measure it. In this way he could tell certainly whether it was a chance print of his own foot or not. So after a few days he again ventured across the island. Alas, on measuring the print, it was much larger than his own. There could no longer be any doubt that it belonged to someone else. Again great fear fell on poor Robinson. He shook with cold and fright. He resolved to make himself more secure against attack. He cut and carried willow stakes and set them in a thick hedge around in front of his shelter. This was outside the first and enclosed it. In a season or two these had grown to such a height as to shut out all view of his home from sight to one coming to it from the front. His flock of goats gave him many troubled thoughts. His goats were his greatest treasure. From them he obtained without trouble his meat, his milk, and butter. What if they were discovered and killed or carried away? He resolved to divide his herd into 3 parts and secrete these in separate fenced pastures in different parts of the island. His herd of goats now numbered 25. He made thorough search about the island for the most secluded and best hidden spots where he could fence in a pasture. One day, as he was exploring on the west side of the island to find another open space for a goat field, he He thought he spied away out to sea a boat. He looked long and anxiously, and yet he was not sure that it was a boat he saw. But how easy, thought Robinson, for the people of the mainland, which must be at no great distance to the westward, to come across to this side of the island in fair weather. He thought, too, how fortunate he was to have been cast on the east side of the island, for there he had his shelter in the very safest part. As he was coming down from a hill where he had gone to get a better view of the sea, he made another discovery. About him, everywhere at the foot of the hill, were bones of all kinds. Near by, too, were charcoal and ashes. There could be no mistake. This place was visited by human beings. These were very likely savages. Everything showed that they came for the purpose of feasting and not for plundering. It was very likely that they neither sought anything on the island nor expected it. This thought greatly relieved Robinson. He returned home in a very thankful and composed state of mind. He had now been on the island almost 18 years and had not been discovered. Yet, no doubt, the island had been visited many times by the savages since he had been there. In a short time his fear of discovery wore off, and he began to live just as he did before his discovery. He took, however, greater precaution against surprise. He always carried his bow and arrows, his lance and knives. He was also very careful about making a great smoke from his fire. He burned a great quantity of wood in a pit and made charcoal. With this material he had a fine fire with very little smoke. Every day, also, he went to the top of the hill back of his shelter in order to discover if possible the approach of savages. End of chapter 35, A Discovery.